everybody. I'm Evie Roberts, and this is my podcast, Talking in the Dark. Welcome. The aim of this podcast is to raise awareness about blindness, visual impairment, and disability in general, in a happy and light-hearted way. For those of you that don't know, I am blind. I was born with a condition called bilateral anophthalmia. Try spelling that one. It basically means that when I was born, my eyes didn't develop properly, so I wear prosthetics instead. The goal of this podcast is to remove some of the stigma and stereotypes around disabilities, whilst also having fun at the same time. Each week, I will be interviewing people from all walks of life, including some with hidden or physical disabilities like mine, and getting to know a little bit more about them and the lives they lead. This week, I am very excited to tell you that I will be talking to Francesca Martinez, who also has a disability and is an incredibly talented comedian, actor, and writer. My name is Evie Roberts, and this is my podcast, Talking in the Dark. Welcome. Hi, Francesca.
Hey, Evie.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm getting over a cold, so apologies if I sound a bit bunged up.
Oh, that's all right. I think everyone's getting cold this time of year. It's like that transition from like summer to winter, isn't it?
Yeah, I find it sad when the days get so short, but I keep thinking it's only like a couple of months until we get to the longer days. Yeah, I love the sunshine, so I can't wait for that to come back.
Oh yeah, definitely. The sunshine is great, and then when the clocks go back, it gets darker earlier. But then you do get an extra hour's sleep.
You do. I was actually up really late on Saturday night, and then I realised, oh my goodness, the clocks go back. And yeah, I love my sleep, so I'm always delighted to get an hour more.
Yeah, same to be honest. So, how's your day been so far?
My day has been good actually, but this is a highlight of my day, so I'm very excited about meeting you and having our chat.
Oh, thank you. It's lovely to meet you too. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Pleasure.
So, to begin with, can you tell me a bit about your disability?
Okay, so I call myself wobbly, but I guess the medical term would be cerebral palsy, which is pretty hard to say. So if you have a speech impediment, it's not the best word. And I was born wobbly, and basically when I was about, I guess, 1.5 years old, my parents took me to the doctor because I wasn't kind of sitting up by myself or starting to walk, and they thought I seemed a bit floppy. I couldn't hold my head up, and this consultant told them that I had cerebral palsy and that I was also mentally retarded, and my parents were quite surprised at this because they thought I was a very responsive, intelligent young baby. So they took me home and they thought, we're not sure this is accurate, because I was able to communicate very well, and I had a sense of humour at that age. So my parents at that point were very young. They were like 20 and 22. But they went back to the hospital and they said to the doctor, we really don't think that Francesca is mentally affected, and here's why. And the doctor quickly, realised that diagnosis wasn't correct. But he gave my parents quite a negative framing. He was saying, she'll never lead a normal life, and it was all doom and gloom. And I think this was quite hard to hear. But thankfully, my parents were very strong-minded, and they've been taught to kind of question other people's opinions and society's definitions. So they left that meeting, and instead of feeling, sad and depressed, they just decided, look, this is our daughter. We love her. We think she's amazing, and we're just going to give her as much love and support as possible. And I think that decision really has impacted my whole life in a very profound way, because I did feel very loved, and as a result I felt very happy and very confident. So of course I knew I was wobbly, and I should maybe say a bit about how that affected me. So basically my coordination has been affected, so I can't do stuff like cook a meal or pour myself a glass of water. I need someone's arm to walk. My balance is affected. So there's a lot of practical things that I can't do. But that was my normality. And I'd be really interested to hear if you feel similarly. Like when you're born with a certain set of abilities or disabilities, they are your normality. So, I mean, can you relate to that in any way?
Oh, yeah, I can completely relate to that. Like, obviously, being born blind, I've never been able to see. So I don't know what that's like. And, I know that I have to do things in a slightly different way, but that's just life for me.
Yeah, well, that is exactly how I felt. And I felt that other people projected their own preconceptions onto me. So, people would look at me in the street and think, oh, poor girl, she can't walk normally, she can't run, she can't do all these things. And I think they put a value judgment on it, which was that must be really hard and really difficult to deal with. Whereas in reality, I was surrounded by a very loving family. I had 2 grandparents who adored me. And yes, of course I struggled with certain physical things. But you know what? Every human being struggles with something. So I never thought of myself as different to that or as someone who had more problems. I just felt that my problems were of a very physical nature. So I needed help with, cooking, cutting up my food, doing up my buttons. But in other ways, I felt very secure, very confident. I loved performing. I loved life. And I felt like I had a very solid family unit. And I feel that a lot of people aren't lucky enough to have that. There are so many people in the world, aren't there, who grow up in homes that perhaps aren't happy, or their parents have a lot of issues, so they don't get the attention or love that they need. So I felt like I got everything important that a person needs to grow up and feel valued. And again, I mean, I'd love to know a bit about your family. Did your family give you strength? Did they make you feel like you were confident and that you could go out and do things despite not having sight?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, my family are amazing, and I've always been very close with my mum. Okay. It's just been me and her all my life, and she is a superhero. And she's always had my back, and she's always made me feel like just because I'm blind doesn't mean I can't do anything. I just have to put my mind to it.
Do you agree that having a mum like that is like the biggest blessing and really shapes who you are and what you believe about yourself?
Definitely.
Yeah. Because I feel the same. I had a very similar mum in the sense that she was always so positive about me. And they never made me feel like, oh, we're disappointed that our daughter is wobbly. They just they made me feel like I could do really anything I wanted, and that with the right support, my disability didn't have to be a negative thing. And I'm really interested because often I say that I feel like being wobbly has made me happier in some ways, and I think people are quite surprised at that. But I think it's taught me some really good lessons. Like, it's taught me what really matters. It's taught me to be patient, to be empathetic, to be kind to others, to try and understand other people's situations more, and also to question the superficial values that we're often told. For example, that, happiness comes from, being beautiful or being skinny or being rich. And I actually believe that happiness comes from embracing who you are and really appreciating the good things in your life. So I'd be interested to know if you think there have been any positives to your situation.
Oh yeah, I completely agree with you. I think there has been. I mean, yes, there has been cases, especially when I was little, where I would say to mum, like, why me? Like, I want to be able to see.
Yeah.
Why does it have to be me who's not normal, not like the other kids?
Yeah.
Then on the other hand, there's so many opportunities that I don't think I would have got if I wasn't blind.
Yeah. Can I just ask you also, because I'm fascinated, do you feel that your inner world has been richer and deeper because you don't have the visual input?
Yeah, I think so. I've always been very empathetic towards others. I've always really cared for others, and I think that maybe some of that is to do with the fact that I can't see.
Sure. So life is interesting, isn't it? Because it gives you challenges, but then those challenges can also be opportunities for learning things of real value, and maybe developing deeper understanding about yourself and everyone else.
Yeah, absolutely. So I believe that your acting debut was in Grange Hill. So
Yes.
can you tell me how that came about?
Well, Grange Hill was amazing because as I said to you, I had a very happy childhood and was very confident. And from a very early age, I knew I wanted to act. So that was my dream. I always wanted to be in the school plays, performing. But unfortunately, my primary school, they kind of didn't let me perform much, which I got very sad about. So when I went to high school, that was quite a difficult time in my life because I went to an all-girls high school that was very mainstream. And it was the first moment when I realised how other people saw me. So, in high school, like, there's a lot of pressure to conform and fit in. And obviously, being wobbly, I just didn't conform and didn't fit in. And I also had other things that set me apart, I loved reading. I guess I was quite nerdy in that respect. I was a vegetarian. My parents were together and everyone else's parents were divorced. I supported the wrong football team. So in a lot of ways, I stood out. And as a result, the girls weren't very nice to me. And basically, I didn't have any friends and I felt very isolated. So when I told everyone I wanted to act, they kind of laughed at me like, oh, that's just a silly dream and you'll never do that. But what happened was one of my support teachers saw an advert in the newspaper saying that the producers of Grange Hill were looking to cast a disabled student who attended a mainstream school. And she knew how much I loved acting, so she recommended me. And I was lucky enough to get an audition. And I remember going to this BBC rehearsal rooms and being in the room with like 40 other kids of different disabilities. and we each had to perform a scene. And I remember just feeling so excited. I wasn't at all nervous. I was like, let me do this. I was so determined that that part of me would be mine. So I did the scene and I learned it off by heart, and the producers laughed and I thought, oh, that's a good sign. And then that 40 or 50 group got down to the last 4, and I then did another audition, and this was like in December 1992. And on New Year's Day 1993, I got a letter telling me I got the part. And I was absolutely delighted. And the best part was that it meant that I missed school like 9 months of the year. And I'd been so unhappy at school that was my dream come true, to actually miss school for a legitimate reason. And I remember going into the new term and the girls in my class were like, so what happened with the audition? And I very casually said, oh, I got the part. And they were just like, what? Because for them, I was like the uncool, wobbly girl. And suddenly I was on the TV in like this huge TV show. And that really did change my life, because it removed me from a very unhappy situation at school where I felt very timid and insecure. And it made me believe that perhaps I could be a performer for a living. And I did Grange Hill for 5 years, and it changed my life because I made friends, I learned all about how to be a professional actor, and it made me start to regain some of the confidence that I'd lost during my school years. So it really changed my life.
Wow, I mean, that is amazing. And the fact as well that you got the part on New Year's Day, I mean, that's just meant to be, isn't it?
I know, it's like a bit of a movie moment.
I know. So from acting, you then transitioned into comedy.
I did.
So can you tell me more about that journey?
Well, towards the end of Grange Hill, basically Grange Hill, there was a time limit. And so after 5 years, I knew that I'd have to leave. So my dad, Alec, who's a writer, he said to me, look, why don't I write you a film script? And I said, okay, yeah, go for it. And so my dad wrote this amazing script. And what did he make my character? A comedian. And so I read this script and I said, Dad, this is amazing, but I could never be a comedian. That is just like the scariest job in the whole wide world. And my dad said, well, I think you're really funny and I think you'd be a great comic. And I thought, what are you talking about? Anyway, this script was brought up by a film company and they were very keen on casting me. But I thought that I needed to go and research being a comedian because it's a very specific talent, and I thought I should go and just find out a bit more. So in January 1999, I joined a comedy workshop in London. This is purely to research the role. And I was so scared in this workshop that I didn't say a single word for 6 weeks. And by the 7th week, I thought, this is ridiculous. I have to try and say something. So I wrote my first ever routine. It was maybe around 2 minutes of jokes. And I remember my teacher that week saying, okay, is there anyone here who wants to perform something? And right at the end of the class, I forced my hand up. And I said, yeah, I do. And she kind of looked at me like, oh, Francesca, okay, finally. And I wobbled up to the front of the class and I held a piece of paper and I literally shook with nerves. But I performed this routine and to my astonishment, everyone laughed. And I remember thinking, this is amazing. I can make people laugh. And also, the routine was very special for another reason. It was the first moment in probably about 8 years that I'd ever mentioned my disability in public. Up till then, I was so lacking in confidence and so ashamed of being wobbly that my strategy was to ignore it. I thought if I pretended to be normal, I would be accepted as normal. But actually, what that moment showed me was, no, if you are honest about who you are, and proud of who you are, and fully accepting of who you are, then other people are more likely to take that lead from you. So in that one moment, I realized, okay, I'm never again going to pretend to be someone else. I'm going to be me, and I'm going to be proud being me and proud of being wobbly. And also I realized that being wobbly was great for comedy because there were so many funny things in my life that I could share, and also I could make fun of people's preconceptions about me. So basically, I went home after that class and I said to my parents, forget the film, I want to be a comedian, I want to do this for real. And a year later, I was at the Edinburgh Festival winning a top award for the best new comedian. And my dad said to me, I told you. And so basically, it's all because of my dad. And if he hadn't written that part, I wouldn't be here today chatting to you.
Oh wow. I mean, again, like I mentioned earlier with the thing about New Year's Day, that also just seems like it was meant to be.
I know it. I know. I'm very grateful to my dad because what surprised me is even through my years at school where I was very unhappy, I did keep my sense of humour. And it was like my coping mechanism, to reach for comedy and to make jokes. And my dad saw that in me and he saw how important humour was to me. And I just feel so grateful that he wrote that part because, again, I don't think I would have ever found comedy otherwise. I was just too lacking in confidence and too insecure to go on stage. So my dad was the one that really helped me, I guess, find my voice and my calling.
Yeah, definitely. So, do you think that humor is a good way to break down barriers in terms of disability?
I 100% do, because what I love about comedy is that you can talk about really important, serious things, but in a really light-hearted and entertaining way. So when I started comedy a long time ago. I'm very old, so I did my first gig in 1999, which is like 24 years ago now. And when I started, there were no disabled comics. So now we have people like Rosie Jones, Jack Carroll, Lost Voice Guy. We have all these great comics. But back then, it was basically me. And so the audience was very unprepared and quite shocked when I would walk on stage. And what I realized is comedy is all about setting up tension and then releasing it. So I set up tension just walking on stage. And what it allowed me to do was address preconceptions such as, can disabled people work? Can they have a love life? Can they have sex? Are they different to us? I can address all these preconceptions in a very funny way. So in a way I could demystify human difference. So I understand that a lot of people can feel nervous when they meet someone different. But the truth is, as you well know, is no matter what package we come in, we're all the same in the inside, We all want to be happy. We all want to do work that we find fulfilling. We want to feel useful. We want to have friends and family. We want people in our lives who love us, who we love. We want to learn. We want to grow. We want to live fulfilling lives. And I think often society labels disabled people as like a different breed of people. Like, you know, we're very we're separate from the rest of humanity, which I think is ridiculous. And one of the things I always say in my comedy is that no one is normal. I've never met a normal person, and we all have things we can't do. So in fact, someone like me or you, we're no different in that respect. We just have our own set of abilities.
Yeah, exactly. And I think a lot of people's, I mean, I don't know if you feel the same, but I think a lot of people's misconceptions around disability are formed by society and not, and people not really interacting with disabled people.
100%. And I don't know about you, but when I was younger, it's interesting, younger kids, they were so accepting. So, like, they were very honest. They never got nervous. They would come up and go, "What's wrong with your leg?" And I'd tell them, and they're like, "Okay, let's play hide and seek." And that was it. And I love that kind of direct honesty, but also that complete acceptance of, okay, you're you and I'm me. And as I got older, and I'll be interested to hear your view on this, I found that society actually conditioned people to be more nervous around difference. And it had all these kind of fears, and it promoted a culture where if anyone differed from the norm, you were seen as, you know, other and, you know, separate from everyone else. Which is why I don't really like the term disabled, because I feel like we all have things we can't do. So why are we defined by what we can't do? I think we're all on a spectrum, and that spectrum is just everyone has things they're good at and things they're not so good at. And that's normal. It's normal to have things you can't do. There's nothing abnormal about that.
Yeah, exactly. Like, no one's perfect, no one's good at everything. But I completely agree with you that there's just something about younger kids that sort of, I don't even know what to call it. They're just so sweet and sort of kind-hearted. They don't really know everything about the world yet. They're still trying to figure that out. So they are usually a lot more accepting. And I used to go to holiday club when I was little during the holidays, and the amount of, like, when I got older, I noticed it more. The amount of younger kids that would come up to me and go, "Why are your eyes closed?" Or like, I move my head a lot. I don't know why. I just move my head up and down. Something like, or they'd ask me like, "Why are you moving your head?" Or like, "Why aren't you looking at me?" Things like that. And I'd tell them, and they'd be like, "Oh, okay." And then they just walk away, and that was that.
I know, and don't you prefer that? Don't you prefer like an honest interaction rather than people going, "Oh, oh, oh, I don't know what to say"?
Yeah, I absolutely love that. Yeah.
So I feel you're totally right in that our culture has a lot of responsibility for this, because I think it promotes a very superficial view of humanity, which is, unless you kind of fit this impossible standard of perfection, you're abnormal. But I actually think it's the other way around. I think we're all different. We all struggle with certain things. And I also think that our bodies and our external appearances have nothing to do with how we feel inside.
Yeah, exactly. I totally agree with you. So I believe that last year you wrote and starred in a play at the National Theatre called All of Us. Can you tell me a bit more about this?
Well, that was just the most magical experience of my life, because, you know, I wrote a play, so essentially it's you're putting your imagination down on paper, you're creating this world and these characters. And my inspiration for writing the play was the impact of austerity on, in particular, disabled people over the last 13 years or so. It has been very devastating. So the government has withdrawn a lot of support, and as a result, many people in the country are struggling to leave their houses. They're even struggling to eat. And I thought this was a massive human rights issue, because we're one of the richest countries in the world. We could provide support to everyone and help them lead independent lives, and instead we're withdrawing that vital support. So that was my motivation for writing it. I wanted to highlight what was happening, because I feel that the very nature of disability often can mean that people find it hard to speak up and to, go on protests or make their voices heard. So I thought this was a very natural idea for the stage. I thought it would work well. So just having my own imagination come to life and put on the stage at our National Theatre, and have a whole crew of technicians and a whole cast of actors playing these characters that I created. It was kind of like being in my head and having that vision come true. And then on top of that, I was in it as the main character. So it was an incredibly magical experience from start to finish. And unlike comedy, which obviously requires you to be funny all the time, what the play allowed me to do was to mix funny with serious. And in a way, that's my favourite thing of all, because I think that's what life is. Often in the most, difficult moments, someone cracks a joke. Like, you lean on humour because it's a coping mechanism, isn't it, to deal with challenges. So I really wanted this piece to make very serious points, but also be really funny. And I was so lucky that the theatre commissioned it, and we had a huge cast of 17 actors, which was, very expensive to produce. But I had an amazing director who came on board and said, we're not changing a word and it needs to be this size. And we had an incredible run. We got great reviews. We sold out. We got standing ovations every night. But what I'm most proud of is that we told the stories of millions of people around the country who are suffering in silence and who don't have a voice. And we opened the door on what was happening, and we showed audiences the reality of being disabled and not getting the support you need. And I feel very proud that we did that.
Yeah, as you should do. I mean, that is phenomenal. So what obstacles and challenges have you faced during your career?
Well, I think we slightly touched on it before. There's a lot of preconception, and when I came onto the comedy scene, it was amazing, partly because it was the first time in my life where I thought that being wobbly was an advantage. And the reason I thought that was because it gave me a unique perspective on life, and I knew the audiences were nosy and they wanted to hear about my life and they were curious. So I really loved comedy for that, because in live comedy, people don't care about how you walk, they don't care about how you talk, they don't care about how you move, they care about whether you're funny. And I loved that, because it was one of the first times that I didn't feel judged on these arbitrary criteria, like, how fast is my walk, or how wobbly am I? They just cared about whether I was funny. So I fell in love with comedy, and very quickly I started touring the world, Australia, America, Canada. But then it was interesting because I got some TV interest, and there was a lot more fear and prejudice from the TV world. they were much more concerned with like people's reactions. So I remember early on, my agent put me up for a stand-up show on TV, and the producer said, we think Francesca's great, but we're worried that the audience will be nervous. And so that was the first time I encountered what you could call discriminatory attitude. That even though I worked around the world as a comic, making people laugh all over, the producers weren't sure and were nervous that the audience would be nervous. And my agent tried to calm their nerves, but I never got booked on that show. And I would say the main thing is that it's taken me a lot longer to break into shows that my peers would get after a few years. I would have to work for 15 years. So I'd have to prove myself in a way that other people didn't. Now, the positive of that is that it made me work very hard, and it made me develop a level of consistency that meant that I very rarely had a bad gig, because I couldn't have a bad gig. If I went to a club and had a bad gig, I wouldn't get a second chance. So I think in that respect, it made me very hardworking and determined. And things are changing now, and there are other disabled comics who are showing the industry that what matters is talent, and that people don't care if you sound a bit different or walk a bit different. But it has taken a long time to get to the point where the TV world is more open and more positive about difference. And I used to say to producers, look, difference is great. People want to see difference. They want to learn about different lives. They want to hear different voices. And for a long time, they didn't quite believe me. So I would have like sitcom projects for 5 years, and they'd nearly get made. But then at the end, it was like, oh, we're just a bit too different and scary, and we're not sure. Whereas now I feel they're finally going, you know what, there's a whole gold mine of untapped stories and voices and experience, and that is really exciting. But it has definitely taken 24 years of my career to reach that point.
Definitely. I think that the way that people with disabilities are represented in in the media, I think it is getting better, but I totally agree with you. It has taken a while, but I mean, like you said, it is getting better now, which is really nice to see.
Yeah, it is. And, progress is always slow. And I think when you're the first person to come through, which I was, the doors are all shut. So you've got to do a lot of banging on doors. But that's one of the reasons I wrote my play, because I felt like, okay, maybe TV isn't quite ready yet, but theatre, they seem more open to telling a different story. So I think I've had to kind of, take slightly different routes to other comedians, but I've been really grateful. I wrote my book, which I loved. I wrote the play. I'm going to write another play. So I think things are moving in the right direction, but I think some of our media, and TV in particular, is still very mistakenly just believing that people want kind of aspirational images and live on screen. I actually think that most people want to see the whole of humanity reflected accurately, because that will normalize difference, and that will actually create a culture where we acknowledge that people come in different packages, and that's absolutely fine. And more than fine, it's exciting. Human diversity, I think, is brilliant. And, meeting you today, I have a million questions for you about what it must be like growing up and living without sight. Like, I would love to see a TV show with a character like you or a play, because I don't know what it's like. And I believe that learning about each other is the way forward to a more accepting and flourishing society.
Yeah, I mean, I've always wanted to do that too. Like my dream TV show, if I had the opportunity to make one, would be about like a blind teenager just navigating through high school. Because I go to mainstream school, so
Yeah.
I'm, mainstream classes, all that fun stuff. And I would love to just see basically a show about a teenager going through high school. Only difference is that teenager's blind, because with any disability, as a teenager, you still experience the same things.
Yes.
You still have fallouts with your friends.
Of course.
You still have crushes. You still go through all the same things as a normal teenager.
So can I ask you, Evie, have you never seen anything?
No, I haven't. I was born with a condition called bilateral anophthalmia, which basically meant that I have the eye socket. But when it came to developing the actual eye, my body went, no, I don't think I'm going to do that, actually.
Okay.
So I have literally never seen anything.
Okay, so can I ask you a couple of questions?
Of course you can.
Okay, do you have any concept of colour?
I do, but in a slightly different way to everyone else. My concept of colour is that I associate colours with different times of year or different feelings. So I have a favourite colour. My favourite colour is pink. And my favourite colour is pink because I associate it with like flowers and summer and things like that.
So, okay, you say flowers there. Do you know what flower looks like? Would you feel a flower?
Yeah, if I, like, when you said flower just then, I pictured a flower, but I pictured the texture of a flower because I wear prosthetic eyes, so I don't even see that black that you see when you close your eyes. So when you say flower, I picture feeling of flower.
Okay, so you picture how a pet might feel?
Yes.
And how do you picture pink?
I associate pink with like, I don't really know, like a very like summery setting, almost like a field full of like flowers. I don't really know why. I just do.
That's fascinating. And what about people? Obviously, like you can feel faces, but do you know what people look like?
I don't really picture what people look like. I go all off voice. But sometimes people say like, oh, people said to me quite a lot, like, do you want to like touch my face to know what it feels like? But personally, for me, I find that quite awkward. I find it really awkward, and I don't picture what people look like. I just go solely off voice.
That's incredible. And do you have dreams at night?
Yes, I do, but they're all based off of audio. So,
wow.
Like if you watched a movie, but you were like, I'm going to close my eyes for this, actually.
Yeah.
So that is literally what my dreams are. They have, but then I've seen like videos of people who lost their sight over time, and some people say that when they dream, they can see perfectly fine, but then when they wake up, it's dark.
So all your dreams are just sound?
Yes.
So you have no visuals whatsoever?
Nope.
That's incredible. Because when I dream, often I can like run and do stuff I can't do.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they're quite liberating. And what about like nature? Like, do you feel you have an idea what a tree is?
Literally, when you say tree, I picture what tree feels like. So I know what things are. It's all based off touch.
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely fascinating. And yeah, I would so love to see a show, as you say, about a teenage girl like you. So when you said that people for you are voices, do you, not our voices, but that's what you go on, do you have very strong responses? Like, are there voices that you'd hear and go, I don't like that person, or I don't trust you?
I used to do that a lot when I was little. Yeah, I would say to my mum a lot, I was like, I don't like them. She's like, why? I'm like, because I don't like their voice. And that was literally what I go off. But you learn as you're older to not judge a book by its cover. You can't just not like someone based off their voice.
But do you feel like maybe you pick up certain energies or you have certain instincts? Because they say that most of communication is non-verbal.
Yeah.
So like we pick up a lot of cues. I just wonder if you have more like of an acute sense about what kind of energy someone gives off.
Maybe. I don't know. I've never thought about that before. I don't think I do, but maybe.
Look, it's just so fascinating. And, maybe one day, you'll help to inform a character based on you, because this is what I'm saying about difference. How many shows have we seen about schools and families? But your experience is so unique. Like, that story hasn't been told, and I think it would be amazing.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'd love to see a show about someone like yourself who's wobbly or who has cerebral palsy, to use technical terms. I don't know if there are any shows like that, but I mean, you're very fascinating as well. And
this is what I'm saying. Like, as human beings, we're quite curious, aren't we, about difference?
Yeah, exactly. So, my final question for you then: what has been your proudest moment in your career so far?
I think it would have to be the play, because those stories needed telling. And just like we were talking about now, there are so many human experiences which have gone untold and which have so many fascinating insights and benefits. And I really believe that diversity benefits everyone. So, for example, all the kids in your class, it's not only great that you're in a mainstream school, but the kids in your class are going to learn things because of you that they would never learn. And I think the way to a more equal, harmonious, forward-thinking society is to be exposed to different experiences and different lives. And so we're often taught to fear diversity, but I have the complete opposite view. I think diversity is brilliant and I love it. And I love meeting people who I've never met before and hearing their views. And, meeting you today has been absolutely fascinating and eye-opening and wonderful. And it affected me, the person, it changed me, the person, and it's made me learn valuable things. So when people go about diversity, often I feel like it's like, they think, oh, it's tick the box, we've got to do this because it makes us look good. And I want to say, no, diversity makes us all stronger because we learn from it and we learn things of value from it. So I think my proudest moment is putting those stories on stage, is because I got to share different voices and different stories, and nobody feel like they don't have a voice in society. Everyone's got something to contribute, and that's my philosophy of life. I call it the Wobbly Revolution, which is embracing difference and seeing the beauty in difference.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there, and I think that the Wobbly Revolution is brilliant. I love that.
Well, I really hope to meet you one day. If I ever come to the Isle of Man, I will get in touch. And if you ever come to London, get in touch as well.
Of course I will. And thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's been absolutely amazing to meet you, and I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to talk to me.
Well, likewise, it's been incredible meeting you, and I just think you're amazing, and I can't wait to see what you do next.
Thank you. In fact, what are your sort of aspirations for the future?
Oh, well, I want to keep. I feel really, like, all my life, I think that if you do something you love for a living, that is success. So I love writing. I want to write more. I want to write more plays. I'm working on a few TV projects. but I'm never happier than writing because I love creating worlds and characters and kind of giving people an insight into, I guess, different points of view and helping them realise that actually we're all the same inside as human beings. So I really hope I can write more plays. I hope I can write a TV series one day which helps normalise wobbliness and celebrates wobbliness for the awesomeness that it can bring to your life. So basically carrying on doing work I love and believe in, and hopefully play a small role in helping society become more inclusive and more supportive of everyone. And I really hope that this culture of like demonizing difference and taking away support from people who need it, I really want that to be reversed. So politically, I want to live in a world where we are proud to help everybody lead independent lives. And as a taxpayer, I want my money going on helping support people. Like, I'm proud of that. So I think if we can have a good impact on culture and politics, and get them to realise that disability is a natural and normal and valuable part of life, I'll be happy.
Definitely. And I'm sure you will be able to accomplish all the things you want to. So thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
It's been lovely to have you. And thank you to my audience for listening, and I will see you all next time.